Last night on the Wednesday night special, we ran out of time. I had to cut a bunch of stuff, including the solution section, and it's really important. Last night I laid out how things are going to change here in America. We are no longer going to be energy independent, and I don't mean like that usually means. You know, we're going to depend on OPEC. I mean, you're going to be dependent on the federal government now. The federal government is doing everything they can to phase out gas and natural gas and coal-fired energy. At the same time, by 2030, will be all of the fleet, all of the cars that you can buy will all be electric. All of them will be electric by 2030. That's going to cause all kinds of problems.
So it seemed like some futuristic prediction, but these companies are literally changing their factories right now to do this. Like they are making the last versions of the cars with combustion engines.
Ferrari,
General Motors, but I mean, yeah, but you're right. Ferrari,
Ferrari.
Like
I mean,
Ferrari.
like the racing, the companies that are known for their engines,
right,
gone. By 2030,
and all of the consumer level stuff.
Yes,
Ferraris are Ferraris. Like they could be crazy, right? But we're talking about Ford and General Motors and every car.
I'll tell you, people talk about what do I do with my money. I was thinking about buying, what is it, the new Charger? I think it is. There's a Hellcat, maybe.
Oh,
the Hellcat,
red line.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have any reason to have a Hellcat, but that's the last of the real engines. A V8 engine, a big block American engine, and those things are going to go up in value because there will always be somebody that wants a big, fast American muscle car, and they're not going to be building them. I mean, this is it. Anything when you turn it on, that's gone soon, very, very soon. By 2030, it will not be made, and I believe by 2022, 23, you won't find those anymore. It'll all be electric assist hybrids right away. By 2025, they're going to start weaning those out, and it'll be all electric by 2030.
And some of those cars are great. There's no question about it. But, there's something lost of the American experience when you're getting rid of
big
combustion engines.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's America.
Right. And you're going to have a problem with energy shortages because of that. I want to get into some of these things a little later on in the program, probably in hour number 3, because it's really important for you to prepare for what's coming. And what's coming is, looks a lot like Venezuela to me, but what do I know? We're going to talk about the border next.
We were just talking off the air about what's coming with the economy, and this is something I think is going to become a much bigger focus. You can't go through what happened over the past 2 years and come out of that with I guess we'll just spend a few $1 trillion and everything will be fine. There's going to be repercussions to that, obviously, and we're now seeing what's happening in China, and we are way more connected as far as an economy goes to China than I think most people realize. Not just from hey, we import a lot of stuff from there, but they have been taking American investment dollars through all sorts of underhanded means for a long time. A lot of times, American investors, not even knowing that these are Chinese companies they're investing in, because of the way they've basically put this under layers of secrecy. Mm-hmm. And China starts falling apart. That government starts falling apart. That economy starts falling apart. We are going to have no choice but to feel a lot of that pain.
These are but the birth pangs of things to come. The new normal is a shortage, and it's only going to get worse. We'll talk about that coming up in just a second. But we have somebody who's actually been down on the border, still down on the border, and is going to tell us what's really going on next. Hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Biden's handling of the border is just remarkable. It's yet another humanitarian crisis. How many humanitarian crises can this guy cause in his first year. Bad on the border. Very, very bad. We have somebody who is down in Mexico currently, Todd Bensman. He is the author of America's Covert Border War, National Security Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies. He posted yesterday a picture of all these IDs all over the ground as people are just discarding their IDs. Why? What's really going on the border? Todd Bensman joins us in 60 seconds. Your National Security Fellow, the Center for Immigration Studies. His name is Todd Bensman. Welcome back to the program, Todd. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. A little bit tired, but doing well. Thank you.
Yeah. So you have been on the border. Tell us what the media is not showing us.
Well, there are a few things. One is that the camp is almost empty. Well, it's about a quarter of what it was, or about 4,000 left in it. It's going to close up here probably in the next week or so. But the other thing is that most of the Haitians that are coming are not fleeing earthquakes in Haiti, and they're not fleeing presidential assassination or even grinding poverty. They have been living in Chile and Brazil for many years, the ones that are coming in prosperity, relative prosperity, and with resident cards and with permission to work in those countries. And they saw the Biden administration opening the border back in January, February, and they started to come en masse. And that is really what is behind this, that these people are not asylum seekers like a lot of Democrats are saying, lawmakers on the progressive left talking about, we have to bring in these poor people who are in dire straits. They are not in dire straits at all. And I think people need to understand that when they apply for asylum, they will be lying and committing mass asylum fraud, because they're going to skip over the fact that they were living safely and securely in these other countries. And that is why I'm finding identification cards all over the Mexican bank.
I see these cards you took a picture of yesterday. They're all IDs. They all seem to be from Chile, a few passports from Brazil. They just discard them. Why all of a sudden in Chile? I mean, Chile's a good country. It's a nice place to live. Why all of a sudden is everybody trying to abandon Chile to come to the Haitians to come to America?
Well, I'll put it this way. I was in Costa Rica reporting on the international nature and makeup of the new migration that's coming to the border from 100 different countries, including the Arab Middle East and countries of terrorism concern all over the world coming right through that area. And I interviewed a Haitian who, I asked him that question. I said, what's the difference between Haiti and Chile? And he says, well, life is 1,000 times better here in Chile. I said, well, why would you leave a life that's 1,000 times better in Chile? And he says, because life in America is 1,000,000 times better. I mean, in Haiti, it is 1,000,000 times better than in Chile. So it's an upgrade. They're just simply going from good to what they think will be better. And that is a far cry from an asylum claim of government persecution. And it's a really far cry from what progressive lawmakers and immigration advocates are claiming is desperate poverty and dire straits. None of these people were in desperate poverty. They were making a living. They may not have been rich, but they were working class and middle class. And some of them did really quite well. You can see it. They're flying around the country on air tickets.
Mm. Did they organize this on their own? Why? It seems weird that all of a sudden all these Haitians show up at the same place at the same time.
Okay, I can explain that. I spent a lot of time with Haitians really drilling down into their stories, their very recent stories. I'm going to try to give you the quick version because I know you've got only so much time, but The Biden administration asked the Mexican government some time ago to station its National Guard on the southern border with Guatemala to slow roll the number of immigrants coming from Mexico, from Guatemala through Mexico to the U.S. border. And the Mexicans did that with a kind of bureaucratic molasses, requiring these Haitians to apply for temporary permission slips to be in Mexico and asylum and different kinds of things. And they weren't getting an answer for months on end. They're just stuck down in Tapachula on the border there until thousands of them built up. And what they told me is that on September 12th, while they were all waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and they were getting very antsy and causing disruptions in the area, they were told that the Mexican government just said, forget it. You can all go now for the Mexican independence holiday of the week of September 16. You can go without papers. Just forget your claims here. Go. And so this particular, because they needed to clear them out.
Okay.
They were backlogged in Mexico. Mexico did not want them. They passed that problem to the Americans in violation of whatever diplomatic agreement they had, by the way, with the Biden administration. So these particular Haitians, this particular group of 15,000, and there's supposedly more on the way, were just simply released. They all had the same story independently about El Grito, which is the Mexican holiday of that week. And I'm thinking the Mexican government probably intended to provide that holiday gift to their own people because, So that's the short-term story. The bigger picture is they were all headed to the U.S. Biden border anyway because they knew it was open. And they're still coming in large numbers in other parts of Texas outside of the media lens range.
So I've read about 2 buses that have been hijacked as they are being taken someplace. Is that true? And is there more than 2? And what's happening there?
Okay, I can explain that. The Biden administration did something very weird for the Biden administration, and it shows how desperate they were to make this political blot go away fast. They took a play from the Trump playbook and started doing repatriation flights of these migrants from Texas all the way to Port-au-Prince. Now, remember, these people have been living for years away from Haiti in these other countries. And so to have to go to be deported to Port-au-Prince was especially acutely painful for them. I talked to a lot of immigrants yesterday and the day before in Mexico because they were fleeing the camp in terror of the possibility that they might get deported. And what the Haitian friends who have been deported were telling them is stay away from the buses, don't get on the buses, don't get on the buses. Those buses are going to the airport and you're going to end up where we ended up. And right about that time is when the violence started on the buses. So my speculation, my informed speculation is that these seizures of buses and the violence on the buses, and there are other cases of violence against ICE officers. They are attacking ICE officers every day now because they do not want to be repatriated to Haiti. But having said that, repatriation to home countries like this is incredibly effective. More than anything else, that is probably what has shut down this camp. It stopped anybody new coming in, and all of the Haitians that I talked to, at least 1,000 that I saw on the Acuna side of the river, the city of Acuna, were fleeing this idea that they could be deported. And I also spent time in the bus station in Acuna filled with Haitians buying bus tickets back to Tapachula, Mexico, back to where they came from. That is happening, Glenn. So, but the question is whether the Biden administration will hang on to that policy and keep using it, because it would shut this crisis down if he applied it to all nationalities across all of the border. But he's under huge pressure from his left. They are killing him. They are clubbing him for using that policy.
So tell me about the number of people that have come in illegally from other countries other than Mexico and south of the border, terrorist states.
Right. Every year there are thousands of people coming from 35 to 40 countries of what we would regard the intelligence community as national security concern. That's going to be Afghanistan. They are coming from Afghanistan in small numbers. I expect greater numbers in the coming months from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Syria, Iraq, Iran. All of those countries have people coming through the same route that the Haitians are coming. I met just the other day in Mexico an Angolan who flew into Brazil from there's a visa waiver between Brazil and Angola, and he came in and he was telling me about all these other African countries: Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Senegal, Mauritania. And I've met immigrants from all of those places on their way here. Lots of Yemenis. Intelligence community sources tell me that the Yemeni problem is so grave because quite a few of them are on the U.S. terror watch list that have been caught at the border, that there is a special unit that has been formed in ICE, Homeland Security investigations, just to deal with the terrorist concern in the Yemeni population coming over that border. That is a true thing. They caught two in California earlier this year, who were on the FBI's terror watch list. One of them was on the no-fly list in Calexico, California. CBP put a press release out about that. It was taken down within 24 hours by the Biden administration, saying, "What? You can't talk about this right now when we've got all these, all this crisis collapsing our border management systems."
Jeez, Rodney, have you talked to any of the Border Patrol agents themselves? What is their morale like?
It is just it's been in the toilet for months and months. Keep in mind that this migrant camp that has attracted all of this attention is only 15,000. And I say only because you have to keep that in context with the fact that more than 50,000 a week are crossing that border, 50,000, 200,000 a month, every month for 4 months straight, over 200,000. And close to 200,000 for many more months, 1.5 million so far. And so it's a little bit, hard to believe that the media is concentrating on these 15,000 when, that's just a typical morning in Texas.
Jeez. Todd,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to call you Rodney. I was thinking about the former chief that has come out has just come out and released something, I think it was yesterday. It was sent into Washington, a report, and it is terrifying. It is terrifying.
I read that. Yes, it is. And, he's finally free to speak, and I think everybody should listen to him and read what he's saying. And by the way, he, even before this, released a video to the troops as he was leaving, farewell kind of thing, and he said he has never seen more terrorists crossing the border than he did in his final months. And if you want to know more about that, the way that works and how they come through and what we do as a country about it, pick up my book, America's Covert Border War. It's all revealed in there, what we do as a nation programmatically, and the fact that we are having this horrendous border crisis is really threatening those counterterrorism programs that we have down there.
Unbelievable. Todd Bensman, thank you so much. Author of America's Covert Border War. He is on the border now. Thank you so much. We'll check in with you again, Todd. Appreciate it. By the way, the report that went to Congress, it said, you've got to pay attention to this border. Terror is on the way. I'm going to give you that letter and read it to you here in just a second. It's pretty shocking. Whether you're wealthy or not, you got a lot to keep safe from a cyber criminal, because it's not just your money. It's your identity. It's going to get in towards the very end, so those planes wouldn't fly half empty.
And what's the process that happens after that? We know. I mean, obviously more than probably anybody else, how difficult it is to go through all of this and try to do this the right way. Is the government doing it that way? I doubt it. And
no way. They're already saying that there's problems, on our bases, where these guys are starting to be roving packs going after the women there. They should be sent back immediately.
And I'll say, for all the arguments to be made for pulling troops out of Afghanistan and Iraq, one of the things that was good about having troops there is that we had the best trained military in the world to deal with terrorists, rather than them, coming after everyday citizens as they shop here in the United States. I mean, the idea of fighting them over there was something that I know a lot of people we've talked to in our military, people who served there, that was the thing they were the most proud of. Was, they had to deal with a lot of really terrible things over there themselves, but they would rather have that sacrifice on them than on some kid going to school here in the United States. And those terrorist groups were so upset that we were there that they directed all their attention there. And our military was very well equipped to deal with those people. Now that they have time to sit around and think and other targets to plan, we could be seeing a growth of that whole cycle all over again.
The Chinese spokesperson said time will prove that it was a mistake for the U.S. to regard China as its biggest adversary. Another September 11th suicide attack of terrorism will come again to America. This is the Glenn Beck program. I want to read something that the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol, who just left the Border Patrol, Rodney Scott, wrote to Schumer and Mitch McConnell and Peters and Portman on September 11th, 2021. Now, he has been not allowed to say anything. He's starting now to get out from underneath all of his, sworn duty things, so he can actually start to actually talk to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He writes, in the position of chief of the U.S. Border Patrol, it's a career civil service position and not a political appointment. As chief, I was the most senior official responsible for border security in the ports of entry. I witnessed an unprecedented seismic shift in our border security and immigration policy that was initiated January 20th, 2021. I believe this policy shift and the associated public statements created the current border crisis. Of greater concern, I also witnessed the lack of any meaningful effort to secure our borders. Contrary to the current rhetoric, this is not simply another illegal immigration surge. This is a national security threat. This thing is horrifying, just horrifying. Today, on the 20th anniversary of the horrific 9/11 terrorist attacks, I reflect on the significant border security advances that we had made. I'm sickened by the avoidable and rapid disintegration of what was arguably the most effective border security in our nation's history. Common sense border security recommendations from experienced career professionals are being ignored and stymied by inexperienced political appointees. The Biden administration's team at DHS is laser focused on expediting the flow of migrants. Listen to that. The Biden administration's DHS is laser focused on expediting the flow of migrants into the U.S. and downplaying the significant vulnerability this creates for terrorists, narcotics, smugglers, human traffickers, even hostile nations to gain access to our homeland. In my professional assessment, the U.S. Border Patrol is rapidly losing the situational awareness required to know who and what is entering in our homeland. The ability of the U.S. Border Patrol to detect and interdict those that want to evade apprehension is being degraded daily. Low-level, unsophisticated, and uneducated smugglers are illegally crossing the border and increasingly evading apprehension daily. To think that well-sourced terrorist networks, criminal organizations, and hostile nations are not doing the same is naive. The current situation is unsustainable and must be mitigated. Experienced civil service staff within CBP, ICE, and DHF have provided multiple options to reduce the illegal alien entries and reestablish some semblance of border security through proven programs and consequences. Yet every recommendation has been summarily, say it, Stu.
Summarily?
Thank you, rejected.
Okay.
Secretary Mayorkas is choosing to ignore the sound recommendations of career government leadership, despite his own admissions that he agrees with them. Of grave concern is the fact the Secretary and other political appointees within DHF have provided factually incorrect information to congressional representatives and to the American public. Try that one on for size. He's saying the DHS now, with the Biden administration, is lying to Congress and lying to the American people. Furthermore, they have directed the U.S. Border Patrol to allow otherwise ineligible aliens to remain in the U.S. inconsistent with CDC Title 42, blah, blah, blah. As a direct result of these decisions, control of our borders has disintegrated overnight. While the sheer volume of aliens is overwhelming, it is critical that policymakers understand that these mass incursions are simply not an immigration issue. These illegal entries are being scripted and controlled by plaza bosses that work directly for the transnational criminal organizations to create controllable gaps in border security. These gaps are then exploited to easily smuggle contraband, criminals, or even potential terrorists into the U.S. at will. Even when the U.S. Border Patrol detects the illegal entry, agents are spread so thin that they often lack the capability to make a timely interdiction. It is important to remember that a border is not a destination. It is just a transit point en route to our cities and towns throughout the U.S. This is not hyperbole. I urge you to request detailed information from DHS CBP on the number of individuals with terrorist screening database alerts that the USBP has arrested this fiscal year. Stu, let's see if we can get a FOIA on that.
Okay.
To ensure you that you are not misled, please specifically ask for comparative data from previous years broken down by method of apprehension, encounter, and immigration status at the time of the encounter. Isn't that amazing? He's writing this to Congress and to the Senate, and he's saying, let me give you that again, to ensure that you are not misled.
Right. They'll release information that's unimportant to this point, right?
Wow.
They'll just avoid. Or they'll redact. That's the other thing they do all the time.
I also encourage you to ask questions about the surge in USBP personnel assigned to the border in Texas. What national security and public health risks are we knowingly accepting in the areas these agents were pulled from? How many miles of borders are now going unpatrolled daily to facilitate expedited processing and ultimately the release of these illegal aliens in the U.S.? What threats are we allowing into the U.S. by continuing to accept 1,000 documented gotaways every day? What programs or IT system developments have been shut down or significantly delayed due to limited resources being redirected to the mass migration crisis? What impact has the current crisis had on the ability of the Border Patrol to conduct thorough debriefings of individuals to determine intentions, threat, and to document transnational criminal activity. He goes into the numbers, which are just staggering. In addition to the clear national security implications of an uncontrolled border, it's unconscionable that as COVID-19 continues to spread, DHS would choose to voluntarily carve out policy exceptions to Title 42. These carve-outs do not appear to comport with any medical assessments that I have read. These policy carve-outs are unquestionably placing the lives of Border Patrol personnel, U.S. citizens, and the migrants themselves at increased risk. In October 2020, over 91% of total encounters by Border Patrol were processed under T-42 and expelled in an average of 90 minutes. A report I received on August 1st, 2021, indicate that nearly 53% were being granted exemptions from T-42, with the majority ultimately being released into the United States. Now, that's basically saying they don't have to have any kind of COVID test. Border Patrol lacks the adequate facilities and resources to conduct COVID testing without significantly increasing the risk of exposure and further degrading our border security. Therefore, any COVID testing is conducted on a voluntary basis by private non-governmental institutions. There's no mandated vaccine prior to release. Processing an alien that illegally enters the U.S. under T-42 authority can be accomplished in approximately 10 minutes, while avoiding congregate settings where COVID-19 exposure would be increased. Consequently, processing an individual under Title 8 to include a notice to appear takes approximately 2 hours and is completed inside an enclosed processing center. If the alien will be transferred to ICE, vice released immediately on their own recognizance, or the time in custody will increase even further, 72 hours. Oh my gosh. He goes on and says how really, well, I'll give you this. I am extremely confident that the Biden administration, to include Secretary Mayorkas, are fully aware of the significant operational risk and the monetary costs associated with all of these pauses, at which times reportedly exceed $5 million a day. It's important that we have that we address the issues directly associated with the Border Patrol's mission. As a senior executive leader within the Border Patrol, I was also privy to discussions that negatively affected security and legitimate trade and travel operations at our ports of entry. I hope Rodney Scott testifies. I hope Rodney Scott becomes a name that everybody knows. This guy is extraordinarily brave. He tried to work within the system. They just kept crushing and crushing and crushing. He is now retired, and he is speaking out. Will anyone listen? That's the real question.
It doesn't seem like there's been a ton of interest from the media in this.
There's not.
You had that burst in March, as we kind of mentioned earlier, and you had the burst when some of the footage came out, but it was really all from Fox News and conservative sources. The only thing that has brought the media to the party here when we're talking about the border are these pictures of border agents on horses, which now gives them a way to say that the border agents are bad. Now it's no longer a humanitarian crisis. Now they can just say, well, look at how horrible we are with immigrants on the border, and maybe AOC can show up in her new watch and outfit and cry again at an empty fence. I guess that's the next step here. But it does seem like there's no interest unless they can come up with an angle that backs up the idea of oppression and all of these other things, as opposed to what's happening to these people who, some of them are actually just out there to break the law. Some of them believe they're completely within what the administration wants.
I think they are.
They're there because they think they've been invited to be there. And that doesn't mean we should let them in, but it does mean that, it's a different situation than some previous border outbreaks. Not to mention, when he's speaking of outbreaks, as he mentions in the letter, serious concern here with COVID. I mean, they keep talking about, well, we need to get everybody vaccinated for COVID.
Why are you not vaccinating then people coming in from other countries?
And you might think, okay, well, they're on the border. What are they going to do? They have doses of the vaccine there. They offer them, but if they say no, they don't make them take them.
Excuse me?
They have Johnson & Johnson doses at the border available.
And if they say no?
If they say no, they're
So
like, well,
the
we're going to respond. Look, it's a personal choice, guys. I mean, you can't. What are we going to do? Mandate the vaccine? Yes, that's what you've been doing to regular citizens who want to go to their jobs, people who actually are supposed to be in the country. That's what you keep doing to them. You're making kids mask up, but you won't make the very least we could do is ask them and make them take the vaccine if they want to somehow come into the country. And by the way, the question, if you remember this back and forth with Jen Psaki and Peter Doocy the other day, Peter Doocy didn't even say, it was reported like, shouldn't we be mandating these vaccines? That's not the question Peter Doocy asked. He said, shouldn't we are we asking them if they're vaccinated and they have proof of vaccination, or they have to complete a test? And the answer was, well, look, they're only going to be here for a few days, and they're not intending to be here. And they're not. If they show symptoms, then we're. And she came up with all these BS excuses.
Asymptomatic. They keep lecturing us that we have to have the vaccine because we're asymptomatic.
Right,
and
asymptomatic transmission.
Yes.
Right, which obviously this is a much easier disease and to deal with if there is no asymptomatic transmission. So obviously, we're well beyond that point here. But in that question was an option to just test them. And even that she didn't say we're doing. Now, that is built into the Biden mandate as well, this one that's been proposed. But shockingly, no rule has actually been written yet. I don't know if anyone's noticed this. They just don't seem to be coming up with this rule. They made this big announcement 2 days before September 11th when he was in the middle of dealing with all of the press catastrophes of Afghanistan. After 2 consecutive months of growth in the rate of vaccination, we doubled the rate. Then he comes out with a mandate?
And
makes no sense.
And by the way, he doesn't have to do the mandate. The corporations are doing it for him, and American Airlines is being sued by many of their employees. We'll talk about that coming up in a second. Realestateagentsitrust.com.